going to ask you 3 questions. Get them all right and you'll understand the AI race. Get them wrong, well, you're about to find out why everyone's been looking at the wrong scoreboard. First question, which country has the most coherent national AI strategy? Is it the United States, United Kingdom, or Saudi Arabia? Second question, which country's citizens actually use AI platforms the most in their daily lives? Is it, again, the United States, UAE, or United Kingdom? The final question, which countries get the most AI bang for their buck? First, the US, Singapore, or Israel? Now, type your questions in the comments now. If your answer is A, and A, you just failed the test that 93 countries were actually taking. And by the end of this video, you will know the answers to those 3 questions. They look nothing like the ones that you've been reading about. Let's start with the one that US is actually winning. That was our first question. Who can build the best AI? According to the Observer Global AI Index, it's an index in the UK, which has been ranking the countries on AI readiness for the last 6 years, which United States is ranked number 1 in the global for overall AI capacity, as you would expect. By spending trillions, American companies built the best labs, recruiting the best researchers, and their world-class cloud infrastructure to match everything. So you can think of like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, the 3 biggest generative AI providers with over 90% of Claude AI usage share. But building the best AI and winning the AI race on all fronts are 2 different things. Because here's where it gets strange. Only 25% of Americans regularly use AI platforms like ChatGPT or Claude. Just to put things in context, so you may understand better, the UAE and Singapore countries rank significantly lower in overall AI capacity, however, have doubled their population's usage with over 50% of them using AI regularly. That's also not a small gap, it's an adoption chasm. The main reason also isn't complicated. The income and education inequality in the US actually creates a near impossible spiral, particularly in rural areas. Lower incomes, limited internet access, and jobs where AI offers no immediate benefits. And the children in those communities are statistically more likely to inherit the same fate. The adoption gap is never about the attitude. The opposite for the large portion of America, it's the absence of broadband connections, the income, and the education. Is it not ironic? The country that builds the world's best, most powerful AI tool, however, left 3/4 of its own population behind before the race even started. Now you might think, okay, but that's a social problem, less of an industry problem. The companies are still printing money, right? Think again, not so much anymore. If you think of Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta in combined, it is projected that they're going to spend more than $600 billion this year just on AI infrastructure, mostly on GPUs, data centers, the physical hardware to train and run large language models. Let's put that in perspective. $600 billion is more than 8 times the entire federal education budget, and AI's CapEx is now consuming over 90% of those companies' operating cash flows. Take Amazon, for example. It alone is projected to hit a negative free cash flow of $17 billion in 2026. The most cash-efficient company in tech history is about to burn that much of the cash, and this is what analysts are calling the AI CapEx cliff, the point at which AI-related spending has now dramatically outpaced AI-related earnings. If Microsoft, Google, Meta, and Amazon don't see a clear sign of profit from AI features by early 2027, the business and financial model will break. It'll all start when enough companies decide that AI's cost simply isn't worth it, dumping their subscriptions and creating revenues for companies like Salesforce or Adobe alike. The data centers will then become ghost factories. Only the giants with other cash cows like Google, Meta, and Microsoft again will survive the wreckage, subsidizing their AI losses while their investors and their shareholders lose. If the companies don't generate revenues soon enough, they'd be running out of room to breathe, and it gets worse. Despite ranking number 1 overall in AI capacity, the US sits at number 45 in operating environment. In short, operating environment includes factors in this ranking that measures the condition in which AI actually takes root, like public trust, regulatory clarities, and how quickly a country lets skilled AI workers through its door. The US loses to a country that is no bigger than Las Vegas. Singapore ranked number 1 and then trailed by South Korea being number 2. UAE is number 3. These countries just didn't get there by building the most powerful models, as we all know, but they've done something right. They got there by building the conditions for AI to be accepted with formal national strategies, the right conditions, and explicit public adoption timelines. America built the world's most advanced AI, and those small countries simply leverage and deploy them. And that's the crack in the foundation. These are the exact countries that have been walking through this. Now, question number 2. Who can actually get their population to use AI? Before I answer this question, let me tell you a quick story. In 2017, the UAE appointed the world's first Minister of Artificial Intelligence. That time, it looked like a PR move. However, 8 years later, it looks like some kind of foresight. But the most consequential move is what they're doing with that position. Since the late 2022, UAE has signed 22 memorandums of understanding with Africa governments on AI-related projects, pledging more than $3 billion to build data centers and cloud computing infrastructure across the continent. Countries like Ghana, Rwanda, Zimbabwe are all potential beneficiaries. You might think this is just pure philanthropy, but no. Their bilateral trade with Africa reached more than 100 billion in 2024 already, with 28% increase year-on-year, with the help from Microsoft investing in the biggest UAE AI companies to make this all happen. AI infrastructure is the UAE's entry point for long-term economic relationships. They aren't trying to build the best model. They knew they can't simply outcompete with America. So they decided to go with a smart path. They're trying to make sure their model of AI governance becomes the one that other countries adopt. The UAE choose influence. Today, 64% of the UAE's working populations actively uses AI. Think about that. In the US, there's only 25%, which makes this country with the highest AI adoption rate on earth by that measure. And now, let's talk about South Korea, because they go with something even more radical. They choose independence. With the control of the whole supply chain, South Korea ranks number 5 overall in AI readiness. However, that they have already surpassed big countries like France and are closing in on the UK. The nation of K-pop and Squid Game is attempting something that almost no other countries can credibly try. A full-stack sovereignty owning every layer of the AI value chain. Start from data, a massive high-quality Korean language dataset, and compute. We all know that Korea is already producing a lot of good quality hardware, that they lead in the high bandwidth memory chips and building AI-specific processes domestically. Of course, infrastructure. Its telecom provides the network backbone for local AI access, and a government-backed consortium. All those big Korean enterprise aims for this one goal, and this one only: building a sovereign open-source large language model. And of course, the full sovereignty just isn't there yet, especially on the hardware. But that's the direction of travel, and it's deliberate. And there's even a South Korea's minister estimated that by the end of 2025, the gap between South Korea's AI model and US frontier model is only about 5 months apart from each other. We don't know that they were being too confident, or maybe that was a really accurate estimation. Regardless, Korea choose control over speed. Now, we talked about South Korea. Let's move on to the US biggest and most fierce competitor, China. They have actually already won this round. In the early 2024, the US accounted for over 70% of global open-weighted AI adoption. Meta has Llama. Europe was also doing really big in open source AI. They have Mistral. With China, there was less than 5% of their open source AI adoption, nearly a rounding error. By late 2025, that has entirely inverted. China's share of global open weight AI usage crossed 50%, that US open source AI usage has fallen to around 25% in 1 year. The country that wasn't supposed to have the compute to compete because they were being cut off from the advanced NVIDIA chips, remember, by US export restrictions, had became the one that the open source community was switching to. And here's the part that should make all Americans feel uncomfortable. It isn't happening in Beijing because, ironically, the usage and the sharing to those Chinese open source AIs is happening in Silicon Valley. Companies like Airbnb, AI-based companies, have shifted their production workload to Chinese models like DeepSeek or Quine. And the reason is also really simple, because the performance rivals frontier AI models at a fraction of their inference cost. And on top of that, you can also see in the Google trend of how often American users are searching for the Chinese open source models. Those Chinese engineers were denied the best chips, so they had to engineer around the restrictions. But then they got to release the best results that under permissive open source licenses. So anyone, I'm talking about anyone, can now take them, use them, deploy them. And a lot of American companies and engineers did exactly that. If you see the page 7 of this latest White House reports, the White House AI Action Plan explicitly named the open source as the matter of geostrategic importance. But posture isn't the same as position. China didn't just catch up, it flipped the whole scoreboard, leveraging and building the top tools that Americans invented. Which brings us to question 3. Which country gets the most AI bang for its buck? To answer that question, we need to look at intensity, which is the collection of AI capabilities, just to name a few, like researchers, infrastructure, investments, innovation, all measured in per capita. The number 1 in the world, Singapore. Over 50% of Singaporeans use AI platforms regularly. They build AI capacity systematically across all dimensions like government strategy, talent, infrastructure adoption, while spending a fraction of what US has committed. If you are American, you are statistically less likely to be near any cutting-edge AI research, nor work in sector, nor directly benefit from AI infrastructure than if you are Singaporean. While US threw trillions at the problem, Singaporean just built systems. So we have all 3 questions answered, but you don't want to miss this 30-second ultimate highlight of where the US is at. More importantly, where you can find all these data that I presented today. America is still building the best and the most powerful AI, there's no doubt. Yet, the Americans still lack getting the citizens to use it. The return on the investment is the most inefficient in the world. And the open source race, the one with the longest lasting strategic importance that either made it or break it in next 10 years' time, was lost last year to a country that Americans thought that had cut off from the race. And the cracks aren't going to close themselves by throwing more money at the problem. Comment here and tell me which one thing that you think the US government should do right away. And of course, my analysis never ends here. There is one more layer to this, the rankings themselves. How they're measured, where they fall short, and why you shouldn't take any of this at face value without reading the deeper analysis, which you can find in the link below. Subscribe now so you'll keep updated on the AI war. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.